Hi there, I'm Savannah Mexto with Mannor Law Group, and I'm excited to welcome you to another webinar Wednesday with esteemed elder law and estate planning attorney, Robert Mannor. This week's presentation is especially for pet owners. We love our furry friends just like our family. Now, you may have made a legal plan for your family, but what happens to your pet if something happens to you? Today, attorney Bob Mannor will talk about the often overlooked options available to ensure the love for your pet can live on long after you're gone. Plus, today we have a special and adorable guest host that you don't want to miss. But before I pass the mic, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping details. First, even though Bob is an attorney, today's webinar will not give specific legal advice. If you do have a question about your unique situation, please contact us after the webinar. If you have a general question during today's presentation, please use the question box. We will save time to review questions during the webinar. If for some reason we don't get to your question, we will contact you after the presentation. Lastly, note that today's presentation will be recorded and the replay will be sent out tomorrow so that you can share it with your family, friends, or anyone who you think could benefit from hearing this information. Now, why should you listen to what the folks at Mannor Law Group have to say? First, note that we're a nationally recognized and respected elder law and estate planning firm. All three of our attorneys are accredited by the Veterans Administration to assist veterans with claims and appeals. Attorney Bob Mannor is nationally board certified as an elder law attorney by the National Elder Law Foundation. He's one of only 19 attorneys in Michigan to achieve this designation. Bob is also a leader among elder law attorneys in Michigan. He's currently chair-elect of the State Bar of Michigan Elder Law and Disability Rights Section and past president of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, Michigan chapter. Also, Mannor Law Group has been favored by readers of our local paper as the best or favorite law firm for the last 8 years in a row. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome attorney Bob Mannor.
Hi, folks, and we've got Finnegan with us here today. So Finnegan is the new puppy in the Mannor household. He's only been with us, actually, we got him on December 24th on Christmas Eve, and the kids were very excited about it. It was a surprise for them, and so he's a good puppy. He's still learning a little bit, but I thought this was a good time to address, well, what do we do about pets? So a lot of times one of the things that we're thinking about is we're saying, okay, well, I got to make sure everything is in place. I want to make sure the things I care about are taken care of. Well, one of the things that we care about is going to be our pets. And so how do we do that? How do we set this up to make sure that they've got a place to go? Well, you know, when we're raising children, of course, one of the things that we're going to put in our will or trust is going to be, well, who would raise the children in the event that we're gone? And then if one of the things about that, of course, is that sometimes we want one group of people or one person to raise the children and a different person to handle the money for the children. And, you know, the same thing applies for pets. So we may say, oh, well, you know, my daughter has said that she would take my dog, or my granddaughter, or my best friend, or whoever it is really would like to take my dog. I don't want to give them the burden of the vet bills and the cost of maintaining the dog and things like that. So how do you set that up? Well, first of all, you can specify who would receive, you know, who would be take over the dog. It's something you probably want to check out with them, make sure they're okay with it. But the nice thing is you can have backups too. So you can list somebody, and then if it turns out that they're not around, then you can have backups in place. And then the other thing that we want to look at is whether or not we want to set aside some money. So it seems like it would be fair, especially if it's not going to be somebody who's otherwise getting an inheritance. Let's say you're leaving your dog or your cat or your horse or whatever to a friend of yours. And so then you say, well, boy, they're not getting a share of the estate. Maybe I should compensate them somehow. So we're going to talk about the methods of doing that and some safety mechanisms and making sure that that's done correctly. But that's the idea. That's the why. Why should we consider this? Why should we do this? Not everybody's going to do it. I understand that. Pets are going to have a different place in people's families, but it's certainly something to give some consideration to and plan for accordingly to make sure that that your pets are going to be taken care of, and that we can set aside some money for that. And we're going to talk about how to manage that money, how to make sure that that's in place, and that we don't have some negative influences. We kind of have to make sure that we've got protections and checks and balances about how that money would be spent, and when did they get the money to care for the pet, and all those types of things. So let's move on. One of the most famous millionaire dogs was Leona Helmsley's dog. So I don't know if any of you guys remember this, but Leona Helmsley, this probably goes back to either the 80s or 90s. It goes back a ways, maybe even more recent than that. But she owned a lot of New York City. She owned a lot of the real estate, hotels in particular, in New York City. And her favorite thing in the world was her dog. And so she was a multi-millionaire. And some people had some negative things to say about her. Her reputation was that she was fairly ruthless, but she loved her dog, and there's no question about that. And so what was interesting about that is all of the news reports when she died. The biggest story about her death was that she left $12 million to her dog. Now, how do you leave $12 million to your dog? You know, does the dog set up a bank account? Does the dog have his own little, debit card that it can run? And of course, that's not how that works. So what she did is she set up a trust. And the idea of a trust is just a contract. That's all a trust really is a contract. And so the contract said, this money is for the benefit of my dog. I'm going to put this person in charge of it, whether it was her lawyer or her banker or her, relative or somebody like that. They were saying, well, they're going to be in charge of it, but the money is actually for the benefit of the dog. Now, what I thought was an odd follow-up story after that is that, people get really greedy when there's lots of money involved. And so other people, I'm imagining it was her relatives or other people that thought that maybe they were entitled to some of that money, they challenged this in court after she died. So she set this up to leave $12 million to her dog and have the dog live in luxury. Obviously, she was obviously living in luxury, and the dog was living in luxury with her. And so she had imagined that it would keep in that same stead. Judge, oddly enough, threw out some of what she had drafted. So that seems unusual and odd, but the judge did still allow for $2 million to be set aside for this dog. And the dog lived its life to its natural conclusion, and had all it would ever need with the $2 million and a caregiver and all of the luxury that it could afford. And then the judge awarded the rest of the money somewhere else. Okay, so just kind of an interesting story, an interesting follow-up. Generally, a judge is not going to be involved in that kind of a thing. So normally when you set up a trust, it's a contract. You're making an agreement with folks, and they are going to follow those terms. And so if you left money for the benefit of your pets, then that's typically going to be followed. It was just the extreme amount of money in the Leona Helmsley matter that got people's attention. But when we're doing a more reasonable amount, not millions of dollars, typically the judge isn't going to have any say in it. It's just going to be that's the way that we set it up. There are a few things that I want you to think about when we do this, and I did not have an opportunity to look at Leona Helmsley's trust, but I would wonder whether or not she had all of this set up. And so the reason why I think it's important to think this through is to say, okay, what if we said, for the sake of argument, what if we said that it was going to be $10,000? I've got this dog, I've got Finnegan, and in the event that I died and there was nobody to take care of him, I was going to leave it to my brother, and I was going to leave him $10,000 to take care of the dog. I'm just using that as an example, right? Well, as a lawyer, I'm always thinking about, well, what's the bad things that could happen? What negative incentives are we building into that? And so in theory, the person that you appoint, although, we trust the people that we appoint most of the time, and obviously we wouldn't appoint them if we didn't trust them, but we wouldn't want to give them an incentive. And so normally we want somebody else other than the person that is receiving the dog, someone else to manage that money. So we'd have a trustee, maybe it's your other sibling, maybe it's, someone else that you trust, and they would hold that $10,000. And the idea is to lay out some terms to say, okay, well, initially when they take the dog, they get $1,000. And then for every 6 months, they get another, whatever dollar amount. And the idea is, so not that people would do this, but I mean, you could imagine somebody gets the dog and $10,000 and then they put the dog down and they get to keep the $10,000. So it's just not to have an incentive, or the dog dies of natural causes after 3 days, or something like that, and they still get the $10,000. And the idea, you might want to leave that person some money, but that's not the purpose of the money. So we want to make sure that the purpose of the money is carried out, and that we have some checks and balances and some safety measures in there to make sure that the money is used for the purpose that it was intended. And then say, hey, look, if there's any money left over, have it go somewhere else, but we don't want it to go back to the person who's in charge of it, right? Maybe to the person who got the dog, that under certain circumstances we say, well, look, if the dog died of natural causes, they'll just get the rest of the money, or whatever the scenario is. We probably wouldn't want it to be to go to the one that's in charge of the money, right? Because if it's in the charge of the money, then they might not want to dole it out to the person that's keeping track of the dog that the dog is living with. So these are all just things that we think about. There's things that we think about when we're drafting for a pet, and it's really important that we don't just say, well, $10,000 to Susie and Susie will take my dog. Okay, well, let's think that through and decide, maybe you want money to go to Susie just because you like Susie, or but if we're going to do it specifically for the care and maintenance of the dog, or the cat, or the horse, or the whatever, then we're going to want to make sure that we lay out those terms, and there's some checks and balances in there. Hi there, Finnegan. Okay. So then he likes chewing on my beard. Then the last thing here that I wanted to talk about was specifically planning for horses. So a lot of people might not plan for their puppy. They might not plan for their cat. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. A lot of people choose to, a lot of people choose not to, right? And it's a good idea, and we'll be happy to include that in your planning, but it's sort of an optional feature. But what if you have horses? Well, we know horses can be very expensive, right? And so we really do want to have a thorough and detailed plan. Where are they going to be boarded? How are we going to pay for the boarding? How are we going to maintain them? What's the status of the horses? Do we have somebody who's a horse person, who knows horses, that could maintain it, that we can, put in charge of it, that they could live with? Do they have a horse farm? Do they have the ability, the facilities for it? And so horses require, if you have horses, it's really something that we need to include in that planning. So when it's a dog or a cat or a gerbil or something like that, I'm just kind of joking on the gerbil, but whatever pet it is, you can, it's sort of an optional feature. Do you want to provide for them, or do you want to just kind of leave it up to your relatives to decide those things? And if it's horses, though, you really probably should have a plan in place. So that's the basics of planning for pets. There's lots of details we can go through, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But the main thing on this is that you want to make sure you work with an attorney that understands the ins and outs of this, has thought this through, isn't just going to put some words on a paper that says $10,000 to take care of my dog. Well, that's not thought out well enough. And so we want to make sure that you get somebody that's going to think this through, that will set it up to make sure that it will go the way that you expected it to go. So Savannah, if you want to come on and talk about how they can get more information about doing estate planning, how they can get more information about making sure they protected their pets, we'll have Savannah come in and give you some further instructions here.
Thanks, Bob, and special thanks to you, Finnegan. And also thanks to everyone for joining us today. I know I'm a pet owner, and I learned some things today that I can't wait to put in place for my own little pets. Now, as Bob mentioned, we do have an easy way for you to get started working with our team. Soon, you will be getting an email from me just following up from today's webinar. It will include instructions on how to schedule a call with us. There are two ways to do that. The first way is to give us a call. And I've actually just put our phone number in the chat box. So if you're attending live today, you can see that there. If you're not attending live and you're watching the replay, you can give us a call at 810-694-9000. Again, that's 810-694-9000. You'll also get an email with a link. This link will allow you to go to a calendar. You'll choose a day and a time where a member of our team can give you a call. This call will last about 15 minutes, and all we're going to do is ask for some questions about your situation. You can talk to us about your concerns, and you can also ask us questions about our law firm, questions about our practice, how we go things, our policy, our procedures, and you can even ask questions about Finnegan. So I do hope that you reach out to us either by giving us a call or by clicking that link. Thank you again for joining, and we will see you next week.